Greetings. I am Dorothy Dowling, a principal of DEI Advisors. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to personal empowerment, and I am delighted today to welcome Michelle Woodley, president of Preferred Travel Group, to our DEI show. Michelle, welcome to our show. I am so honored to have you with us today.
Thank you, Dorothy. Thanks for inviting me, and to all the DEI advisors for the work that you're doing in the industry to encourage and promote personal growth and empowerment. I think it's fantastic, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Michelle. So I wonder if we can get right to it, Michelle, because you are one of very few women who are the president of a global hotel company. And if I might add, someone who has been a president of a hotel company for quite some time. So I'm wondering if you would mind sharing your career journey with us, the learnings you've had in terms of advancing your career to really secure that top leadership position at Preferred.
Sure. I mean, I think I always knew I wanted to go into hospitality. I come from a Greek family. Both grandparents came over from Greece to the US. So hospitality, I think, has just always been in my blood. My maternal grandfather was a bellman. Then room service at the Blackstone Hotel here in Chicago. And my paternal grandfather was a grocer. And then my grandparents on my mother's side also owned a candy shop. So I think some of those things were just inherent and are just a part of you. Growing up, no one ever left our house hungry. So the idea of hospitality and welcoming others has always just been a part of my life, which then led me to going to school at Cornell. I went to Cornell, I was in the hotel school. I actually thought I wanted to go into food and beverage. So growing up, I cooked and I catered everything. I even catered my brother's senior prom of high school. So F&B was the way I was going. And then funny story, I took my first food chemistry class. And I said, food chemistry. I just wanted to be in the kitchen cooking. So needless to say, I left food and beverage, and I actually went into finance and information systems, which led me to my kind of post-graduating jobs. I did a really short stint in a training program at Hilton, but that really wasn't for me. It was a little too rigid and didn't allow me to spread my wings enough. So through a contact through somebody I'd interned for, I actually was approached by Swiss Hotel Chicago to be their systems person. And I really did not know much about systems in the real world. But I was really lucky to take that job and get into hotels and really have to understand how things work, front of house and back of house, because I had to be the person who helped people with systems. And through my time with Swiss Hotel, I grew into a corporate position, which was around central reservations and distribution, which it was at a time when all of that was brand new. And as a young single person, I got to travel the globe, doing a ton of training, which was an incredible influence on me and my life, because it really taught me the value of being global and understanding the perspectives of others, and that not everybody was alike. And so that was a huge learning experience when I got into the corporate world of understanding what it meant to work for a global company, both as someone trying to get things accomplished, but also dealing with associates around the globe and things of that nature. Then in around 2000, when Swissair, the owning company at the time, was selling off some of its assets as part of the management team, the executive team of the Swiss Hotel Company. And we decided that we wanted to sell ourselves versus being sold off. And Swissair was more than happy to let us do that. So I worked with the bankers on the offering memorandum and actually going through that sales process. We eventually sold to Raffles, where I stayed through a transition for a couple years. And during that time, for me, it was about getting out of my comfort zone because I'd been with Swiss Hotel for 10 years at the time, had helped build a culture, and now I had to learn how to integrate with a different culture. So getting out of my comfort zone from that perspective, and also being transparent about myself and my opinions, and understanding that it was going to do me no good to pretend I was somebody who I wasn't, and that I really just had to be honest and earnest in everything that I was doing. And that definitely proved to be kind of the best policy I could have adopted at that time. And then I joined Preferred in 2002. I'd always admired the company for what it did for independent hotels. And I understood that, hey, if I was a general manager of a hotel, I would want the services and the reach and the services that were being provided by Preferred. So I joined as the head of marketing back in 2002. The Uberoth family acquired the company in 2003. went through a rebranding, headed up global marketing strategy, leaned a lot on my previous experience and that global piece of it, but also learned a lot about operating in an environment of independent hoteliers and independent providers who all have their own perspective, and understood how to how to deal with that and how to be informed about making decisions. And then the company just continued to grow and evolve. And I had a lot of opportunities to oversee different periods, different departments. And through all of it, like, I never said no. It was, hey, can you oversee this for 5 months? Sure. Can you oversee this for a month? Sure. So I think I really just learned to be adaptive and to never say no to an opportunity, which has, kind of led me to where I am today. And along the way, I got married. I had 2 kids, still always hosting a party, whether it's a birthday, a graduation, welcome to the neighborhood for whoever might be, or just, enjoying bringing people together, which brings it all back to hospitality, and this never ending desire to want to make sure people feel welcomed and warm wherever they might be, and my own personal desire to keep learning.
Well, that's an amazing career story, Michelle. And I do think, starting in the IT distribution space, I mean, you were a trailblazers before people were talking about women as trailblazers. So now I truly understand how you were able to continue to power your career and become the senior executive that you are, leading the preferred travel group. And I must say they're very fortunate to have someone that has the breadth and depth of your knowledge, as well as someone who has worked in the category, the luxury category, so that you truly understand that owner mindset in such a powerful way. So congratulations, and thanks for sharing all of that with us. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about whether you had career champions, and if you did, if any of them were really important to powering your career, and if there's any stories that you would be open to sharing with us.
Yeah, sure. I have one very important mentor in my life, and she was somebody who I met actually when I went for that job interview at Swiss Hotel to be the systems girl and had no idea what it was about. I distinctly remember meeting Marianne. Her name is Marianne Russell. She was the front office manager at the time, and to this day, I can tell you exactly what she was wearing. She was wearing a royal blue suit with a great printed blouse, and I was being introduced to her by the controller who was hiring me, and she had a great firm handshake. And all I remember thinking was, I want to be like her one day. And I think it was the confidence that she had and the smile on her face. And, long story short on this is that as a systems person, I had to work really closely with the front office manager. And about 8 or 9 months into it, she and I went away to training, systems training. She was going for the front office. I was going for the back office piece. So we spent 2 weeks together and really got to know and understand each other. And about 3 months after that, so a year into the job, she was going to be promoted to the rooms division manager. And she asked me to be the front office manager. And I remember saying, Marianne, I'm the systems girl. And this was a 630 room downtown Chicago hotel. And she said, and this is the first time I heard it, and it's something I live by today. She said, I can train you on how to be a front office manager, but you have the talent to get it done. And so this whole idea of hire for talent and train for skill was a big lesson that she taught me. Was, you can teach anybody how to do a schedule and how to check people in and out, but there's certain things that are innate in individuals. And she certainly saw that in me and believed in me. So we actually had to go up to the general manager's office, and she wanted to let him know that I was going to do this. And he said, this is back in the early 90s. You're crazy. She's a young girl out of college, rather, how, this can be. And Marianne said, I tell you what, we're going to do it for 90 days. And if it doesn't work out, she said, Michelle will go back to systems and I will go back to the front office. But fortunately, we never had to be back. And then throughout my career, Marianne has been a great mentor to me. We worked together for another 3 or 4 years, and then she moved on and had a great career as an executive with Hilton as a general manager and regional GM and things like that. But I've also had some great champions along the way. 2 of them were with my days at Swiss Hotel, and this was during the era of the growing electronic distribution and central reservation systems and the need for this. And 2 of the CEOs at the time were gentlemen who grew up as hoteliers and food and beverage and in service and that end of the business, and did not really understand all the technology. And they were big champions of mine because they had confidence in me to be the one to figure it out and to learn it all. And they also knew that it was an area they didn't know and didn't feel that they could get to the expertise. But because of that, they entrusted in me in being the one to learn it and to bring the company forward in both central reservations and distribution, eventually the internet, in revenue management, and always had my name at the table, if you will, when these kinds of things were being discussed, which then, of course, just broadened into other bigger discussions. So Pierre Martinet and Andreas Meinhold were huge champions. And then, of course, when the Ubroth family bought Preferred Hotel Group and Preferred Hotels and Resorts, they had an immense amount of confidence and allowed me to stretch very broadly and to help them through some areas that they didn't have experience in and to share with me a lot of the experiences that they have. And right now, Lindsay, who's our CEO, Lindsay Ubroth, who's our CEO at Preferred Travel Group, and it really, I'd say our entire team, we're big champions of each other. And I've learned a lot about continued empathy and really to look at the long game on things and not to always look at things too short term, because there's usually a longer game and a longer benefit to be had.
Well, thank you, Michelle. You shared some really beautiful stories. I think it's very impressive that so early in your career you had a female champion who was able to really give you that confidence to take the kind of risk that you did. Also to give you some comfort that there would be an opportunity for you to go back if it didn't work out. But
Yeah.
Those are really incredible stories of individuals that valued you for not only your subject matter expertise, but just your overall mindset, which I think is a tribute to you, but it's also a tribute to the organizations that you chose to work with, that they truly valued all of those elements of their talent pool. So thank you. I'm loving hearing all of these stories. I'm wondering if I could go a little bit further, because you work in a very unique role in terms of working with owners that have very significant investments in their assets. And in the luxury market in particular, there is a lot of complexity to the business operation. So I would like to see if there's anything that you can share with the audience in terms of being a senior executive, being able to work with very seasoned owners that have very high expectations in terms of how they go to market, how they respond to their customers, the partners that they work with in terms of your level of support. Is there any guidance in terms of your growth and how you have worked with all of these important stakeholders?
Yeah, sure, Dorothy. So there's indeed a very wide audience of stakeholders in our business, internally and externally, and across the globe. Our own associate base is 300 people in 22 countries. Within Preferred Travel Group, we have 6 business units, Preferred Hotels and Resorts being the largest, but we also have Historic Hotels of America and Historic Hotels Worldwide, and our Beyond Green hotel brand, and a consulting division. But within the hotel portfolio, it's over 1,000 hotels, each unique in their ownership structure and management, as well as the needs and what they're looking to us for and for our brands to fulfill. And that means we have relationships with institutional investors, all the way to family owned and operate, right? And that's a huge gap to have to kind of cross and to understand what all those individual needs are. But I will say that regardless of that, what I've really learned is that preparation when talking to any of them is incredibly important in any client, and understanding the desired outcomes of the relationship is imperative. So for all of these audiences, it requires really active listening and the ability to empathize, to truly understand what they're telling you, right? So if you're not able to, and some aren't even able to articulate it, right? So then there's a skill set that has to be built of how can you ask those probing questions in a conversational way. Now, for the bigger, more mature and sophisticated management companies, investors, they're very straightforward about what they're looking for. But those who are less can sometimes actually be more challenging because they don't know how to articulate what they're looking for. And so the ability to ask some probing questions and keep it non-threatening, but rather in a conversational way, is super important. And some of that I think happens just through experience and learning how to do that. But for me, it's a continual concerted effort to sit back and ask why. Why is somebody looking for us to provide something, again, whether it's in the hotel space or whether it's on the consulting space, and then for us to determine how we can best deliver on it and then share that so that we manage expectations along the way. That's one of the biggest things that we talk with our development team on as we bring on new hotels, is that we've all got to continually manage expectations, and let's not overpromise. Let's make sure that anything that we say we can do, we can, and that we'll be able to do in the time frame and to the degree that people are looking for. And that requires also a lot of collaboration across our team. So none of our development calls can go out without being informed about what we know about a market and what kind of demand we know that there is and what we believe that we can contribute to a hotel. So so I'd sum that up with preparation and understanding and the ability to ask those questions and to be able to sit back and reflect on it before going in.
Well, and if I might add one other point that I thought was really important that you offered, Michelle, which I'm sure comes from some of your background in terms of your marketing, sales, and distribution, is not overpromising. It's really understanding the value creation you can bring to make sure you manage the expectations of who you're choosing to support. The one question I'd like to go a little bit deeper on, and I know you talked about your teammates and just the variety of different owners and institutional investors and others that you support, but it's also this ability to transcend that from a global mindset. And I know you said early in your career, you had the opportunity to travel and support hotels around the world. I've always believed that this global mindset is a really important component of an executive like you, Michelle, because I learned early on that I often found out when I traveled and worked in other parts of the world that it was about what I didn't know and helping to learn from others, because they truly did understand their market and their customers and their associates far better than I probably ever would. But you've led a global company for a long time. You've achieved amazing growth. You do incredible things. As I said earlier, I love following you on LinkedIn and seeing all of the brilliant ways that you're providing value to your hoteliers around the world. Can you talk a little bit about that mindset and how you continue to shape the value creation that you bring to all of your global stakeholders?
Yeah. As you point out, Dorothy, I mean, I was so fortunate to have traveled the globe so early in my career. I mean, I would literally go around the world, come home, be like, okay, everyone's trained. And then it was like, the CEO was like, when's your next trip? So I got to do a lot of that. And I trained hoteliers from general managers to front office to reservations, especially on the CRS during that time, and really educated them on the technology, basics of revenue management. And I found I needed to get beyond here's the buttons you press, but to the why behind it. I also learned from those experiences to appreciate that every country, every region, every hotel, every person is different, and that their motivation for coming to work can also be very different, and how that influenced how and why they worked. So, for example, 30 years ago in Beijing, coming to a hotel to work was a place to have a shower, to get clean clothes, and to have a warm meal. Something that was very foreign to me at the time, and it's actually still true in some parts of the world today. But for me, taking that time to understand what motivated each individual and why that was really important to them was something that I learned. That's kind of back to your point there of understanding things you don't know, and then taking that and then turning that into why they should want to learn and to grow. And I carry all of that with me today. So I think that, as a global leader, it's really important to be mindful of the perspective of others, whether it's an associate or a hotelier or a client. And while business is global, and the world moves super quickly, and we can say that even English is the, global language of business, and that, everyone needs to think globally. We can't ignore tradition and customs. They can't be underestimated at all, especially in very, certain parts of the world. I love my annual trips to Japan. It takes me back to where tradition and certain customs have to take place. Now, if you skip over a tradition or a custom, nobody will tell you that you missed it. But it may come up later down the line as to, and I wonder why they didn't come to our global conference this year. because you miss doing something along the way. So again, the tradition and customs, they can't be underestimated. And we cannot be self-serving and say, but the world is global, everybody should be global. So um, that's definitely one aspect of it. And then, with a third of our workforce being outside the U.S., we need to be very conscious of that as well. And as much as we are a global company, again, being conscious of what's important to individuals is really important. And so to support those relationships with our associates and with our hotel clients, we have to keep that perspective in mind. And then, as a company, we host global town halls every month. Lindsay and I do a town hall, and finding a time is really hard to do it. And so there's never the perfect time. So a couple times a year, we do 2 sessions. We do one in my evening and one in morning so that the folks in the Asia Pacific region don't have to be on at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. A couple times a year, we host just smaller ones that are more regional. So, we have to, as leaders, take those things into mind, even though those across the globe are more than happy to come on at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. It gets tiring after a while. So we have to take those things into account. And I think we do a pretty good job of it, but sometimes we forget and we have to be reminded of it. The other comment I wanted to make on this, Dorothy, about being global, to me, it also means being inclusive across ethnicity, sexual orientation, and across generations. So global really, to me, kind of means being more inclusive. The geography piece is one piece of it, and something that I think people have learned over time, and you can even read about that. But these other areas of inclusivity, part of what DEI is about making sure that we are all thinking about this on a daily basis. And from this perspective, we try to make sure we encourage input and feedback across the board to ensure we don't overlook the needs of a certain group, whether it's an associate group or a client group, or that we're insensitive to somebody, and that we are, paying attention to what these needs are. And I found that to do that as a leader, especially with the internal audience, it's really important to ask questions and encourage that participation in smaller groups, or even one-to-one, to let everyone know that it's safe to speak up and to have input. And you can oftentimes, by reading a room, that somebody has an idea, but their culture might not allow them to speak up or prevents them from thinking they can. And so it's that phone call after to say, hey, I think you had something to say about the topic. Would you like to share it with me now? And honestly, I even find that from time to time with some of our hoteliers who may be from a smaller town or from a small company, and they feel intimidated by the big guys around them. So, reading the room and then taking that time, not calling them out in front of everybody, and just being sensitive to what they may be thinking or feeling. And then, picking up the phone after or having that one-on-one conversation is also really important.
Well, I think you have beautifully characterized one of the things that I have found in the literature today, where they've changed the word soft skills to human skills. Michelle, and you represent that in such a powerful way in terms of being a leader that brings your humanity first and forward, and is such a good listener in terms of all of the individual stakeholders you support. So I think that is an amazing way that you go to market from a global mindset, is that you bring your humanity forward and your ability to support other human beings in such a respectful way. So thank you for sharing that story. I'd like to sort of pull on that a little bit more, because of course you and I have gotten to know each other through our work through HSMAI, and you give a lot to the HSMAI Foundation, which of course is dedicated to talent and upskilling and really trying to understand how we can really bring hospitality back as a destination career and grow talent in terms of their ability to contribute in powerful ways. So I'm just wondering if you can share a little bit about the volunteer commitment, particularly your work with HSMAI, and how that has really fueled your personal growth.
Yeah, it really has, Dorothy. It's been an invaluable experience across the board, personally and professionally. As I look back on it, giving back has always been a priority for me. Early in my career, I joined industry associations to learn, right? I knew there were things I needed to learn. And it quickly became evident that the hotel industry needed advocacy and individuals who loved to promote it and build pathways for others. And I found that especially important as technology and distribution was advancing rapidly in the 90s, and there just weren't enough people to go out there and talk about it. So I was always happy to volunteer to go train. It didn't have to be even my own company, like just this idea that training others will benefit everybody. And so I did a lot of that, and I embraced doing that. And I volunteered a lot of my time in the training and writing educational materials, again, not just for me or my company, but to be shared. And as the importance of that visibility of distribution and revenue management came into the industry, I was able to then turn to having much more of a focus on the people of the industry. A lot of what we're doing right now with the foundation at HSMAI is really focusing on talent. And I do some of that work also with the Center for Hospitality Research at Cornell. And when there's talent related issues, those things are really important to me. I also did I did a reverse mentor program with women in hospitality and travel in 2022. That was a great experience to learn from a younger generation. And I have to tell you, a reverse mentor program was hard, because when you're used to being the mentor, you want to set the agenda and make it up. But this was an environment where my mentor in this case, who was a younger person, she set the time, but I had to set the agenda of things I wanted to talk to her about and learn from her, which was amazing. So sometimes, again, kind of turning yourself around and going outside your comfort zone can be incredibly mind-opening. And that way, it was hard, but it was a really great learning experience as well. And something that I learned, if I hadn't gotten into this idea of focusing on people and volunteerism, I don't know that I would have had it in me to do that. So from a personal level, giving back and playing an active role in education from so many aspects has been super, of course, personally rewarding. And then when I look at it from a professional standpoint, it's allowed me to see many different aspects of hospitality from different vantage points, whether it's a difference in hotel operators or how other companies operate. It's been a great building block for networking, of course. And, volunteerism has helped me grow my leadership skill set, because in volunteerism, especially in the association world, resources can be really scarce. And when someone is willing to raise up their hand to own a project, no one has to ask twice. It's definitely given to you. It's kind of that funny saying, if you leave the room, you're the one who gets volunteered. But but doing it from a professional standpoint has also helped me with, time management and honing my own leadership skill set in different ways and stretching in other ways. So, there's lots of benefits all the way around when people devote themselves to volunteering.
Well, and you've highlighted a few very important things from a career point of view. In my perspective, Michelle, one is the network value of getting yourself a peer network in the industry that can help you learn and grow and obviously support your career journey. I think the other aspect is that ability to grow leadership, because you are given stretch assignments, because you've put your hand up and you have, taken the ownership to take on that role. So I think that is what volunteerism really affords leaders if they're willing to take on that extra work. There's one thing that you said, though, in terms of your reverse mentorship journey that, again, I would like to highlight a little bit, Michelle, which I think is a real credit to your leadership, because a lot of folks talk about leaders, the CEO leader today or the president leader, that, they are rock stars and they love to hear their own voice. They have a lot of hubris. And what I would say, I think what you continue to demonstrate through this conversation is, again, your ability to learn and grow and not to suffer from any of those kinds of things, to understand that you're on a continuous journey of learning and that you want to continue to learn from all individuals in your organization and outside your organization to fuel your growth. So I think that's a very meaningful lesson that I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, Dorothy, I've always said to people, like, when I stop learning, or when a day goes by that I have stopped learning something new, or that I feel I haven't taught somebody else something new, like, then I know it's time for me to move on. So haven't gotten there yet. So
I don't think you ever will with the attitude that you have, Michelle, because I think you embrace learning in everything you do. So I would like to move a little onto resiliency, because we've all worked in this industry for a long time. There's been a lot of up and downs. Obviously, the most dramatic for many of us was through the pandemic. But I'm wondering if you can talk about how you have continued to navigate the business cycles, personally, professionally, and any advice again that you would share with the audience about learnings that you could share.
Sure. I mean, I think we all think about the significant time periods, whether it was 9/11 or the financial crisis in '08, or most recently the pandemic, but there's been little microcosms in between all of those. And I think through all of them, so there's one side of it for me that has been the belief that, travel is really treasured by those who have done it. And it's something that a lot of people aspire to do. And leaning on that has been really important for me, having faith in human behavior and grasping that travel and hospitality really are borderless, has been a bit of a guiding light for me. And that as I see more people travel, the world does start to become a little bit of a better place. And that's on the kind of keeping moving ahead, and why do I stay in the industry, and having the positive attitude about travel and about hospitality. From a business standpoint, having a solid foundation has been really paramount through all of these kind of experiences that we've been through. And I feel that it falls into two categories. There's, of course, a financial foundation, is always making sure that you're running the company and considering all the people who you have responsibility to, both the clients as well as your associates, and making sure that financially you're on stable ground, and not taking too many risks that put you outside of a comfort zone to plan for that so-called rainy day. And the second side of the foundation is strong relationships with your team and your clients. So having the agility from a business standpoint to prioritize spend and control costs is what comes when we go through these times of crises, which is super important and, of course, really relevant. But having those solid relationships with clients, for us, that's our hotels, that goes beyond a transactional relationship, has really been invaluable, probably most seen during the last few years with the pandemic. Of course, there were financial issues that we had to deal with, and we did. But the most important thing that we did, and was the most rewarding, was reaching out to our hoteliers just to say hello, and ask them how they and their teams were doing. I mean, I had calls set up with our general managers, owners from around the world, and I think they really thought that the call was, when are you going to pay us? And it was just, I'm just calling to see how you are. And you see this like sense of relief on their face, and oh, that's all no one's called to ask how we are, and to understand what they were going through. Of course, it informed us to know what kind of tools and resources they needed, whether it was, other kinds of town halls or things to keep their associates busy and keep them informed. But truly just that idea of knowing you had a relationship beyond transactional was really important. And we saw the payoff for that then as we stuck with them and they stuck through us, getting through the pandemic, and then re-engaging with them at the right level as everybody in every part of the world was ready to. And the relationships that we had, and still have with our associates, was also really critical in moving through difficult times. Again, most recent experience being the pandemic. Transparency was for sure a key element for us in dealing with staffing. And of course, we had to make some very tough decisions. But Dorothy, I can't tell you how humbling it was when in some of the conversations we were having, whether it was laying people off or even furloughing, where staff was saying, "You've done so much for me over the last 5-10 years. This is the least I can do right now." I mean, oh my God, it was a really, humbling experience to go through. And then as we kind of move forward with a stable team, and in turn to growing back up as a company, restaffing, a focus on health and well-being of our associates it's a key tenet of our ideology. We care. And now more than ever, I think we all see just the importance of not losing sight of that, or thinking, oh, we're over it and the effects are gone, because they certainly aren't. And having that continual reminder of humanity is really important. And we continue to focus on that. We can't lose sight of that. So, I think all of those things are just contributors to how we get through challenging times and adversity in our lives. And I think we all know now, we never know what's going to come, nor how long is it going to stay around.
Yeah. And I think that's really solid advice, Michelle. And there's the aspect of having that financial accountability and understanding that you've got to support the company's health, but also this whole value of investing in relationships and being very thoughtful in terms of trying to bring that humanity forward in understanding individuals' needs as they navigate a lot of these very difficult times. So again, great advice from a great leader who obviously is someone who is very focused on bringing that human skill forward. So thank you. We're coming up near the end of our interview, and the question that we always like to ask everyone who joins DEI Advisors is if there is advice, if you were to go back and think about that younger self when you were part of the Swiss Hotel Network or something else, if there's advice you would offer. I know you have two sons, and I'm sure that you often are asked to give them some career guidance. So I'm just wondering if you put yourself in their shoes or some of your associate shoes, if there's advice that if it was Michelle Woodley that was receiving the advice, what you would offer.
Yeah, of course, I think about that a lot, of course, with my own kids, and try to give them the advice that I would have wanted to hear. And some of that's, about taking the risks, and be sure to take even more time to enjoy the joys of travel. That's what I would have told myself, to enjoy it even more. I mean, I think I enjoyed my travels a lot, but I would encourage myself to enjoy it even more. And of course, all the experience that it brings to the table, and just to be forever curious, never be afraid to ask a question, ask the why, because chances are other people around the table are asking that same question. So that's kind of where I focus on those kinds of things, as well as, kind of do what you love and love what you do. I've said that numerous times to my kids in the last 6 months, is saying, hey, we all have our own different journey, and you will find it. But if you're doing what you love and love what you do, it makes it a little easier.
Well, and I think those are wonderful pieces of advice. And I do think from individuals that have had long careers, Michelle, taking a little bit of time through that earlier journey to smell the flowers and to enjoy some of what your work experience afforded you is a really great lesson. And I also think just enjoying the world and the work is always a powerful lesson for everyone. So I just want to express my gratitude to you, Michelle, for taking the time to share your story. I learned a lot about you that I didn't know. And I truly have an even deeper appreciation for the way I see you in the work that we get to do together, and for the great leadership you bring to the industry. So I'm just incredibly grateful to you. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Dorothy. And again, I love what DEI is doing. And I think empowering personal success is really, really important for everybody. And especially in this day and age, we need to promote it and encourage it, and not assume that it's happening on its own. So thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Well said. Thank you. So thank you also to our audience. And I'm hoping if you enjoyed this interview with Michelle, that you will visit us on our website, deiadvisors.org, where you will see other webcasts and podcasts from other leaders, brilliant leaders like Michelle, that I know will empower your knowledge and fuel your spirit. So we hope to see you there. Thank you again, Michelle.
Thanks, Dorothy. Bye-bye.